This happened during the winter, right after I moved to a new neighborhood. I'd been out late, hanging with friends, and decided to walk the last few blocks home. The air was freezing and it was pitch black since most of the streetlights were out. As I walked, I suddenly felt like someone was watching me. I shrugged it off, telling myself I was being paranoid, but then I heard it, a soft, shuffling noise coming from behind. When I glanced back, I caught a shadow ducking behind a parked car. My heart started racing, but I kept my pace, hoping whoever it was would leave me alone. But they didn't. I kept hearing that shuffle, that faint sound of shoes against the pavement. I stopped, pretending to check my phone, and then I saw him, just a few yards behind, barely visible in the dark. A man was standing there, staring at me. He didn't move, didn't say a word, just stood there watching me like he was waiting for something. I tried to play it cool, but every instinct told me to get out of there. I started walking faster, practically speed walking now, but he started walking too, keeping just enough distance to make it clear he was following. I tried to take random turns, hoping to lose him, but every time he'd turn too, his footsteps echoing mine. I was nearly home when I decided to make a run for it. I sprinted the last block, my lungs burning from the cold air, and just as I reached my building, I dared to look back. He was standing at the end of the street, watching me, like he'd been planning this whole thing, like he wanted me to know he'd be back. I rushed inside, locked the door, and didn't sleep that night. Every noise made me jump, every shadow felt like him. I never saw him again, but I'll never forget that empty stare and the feeling that he could be out there, waiting for me to slip up, to walk alone again. I'll never forget this one night about 6 months ago. I was working late, and by the time I got out, it was nearly midnight. My usual bus route was shut down, and I'd have to take a much longer way home, so I figured I'd walk the shortcut, a narrow, dimly lit alley that saved me 15 minutes. As soon as I stepped in, I noticed how unnervingly quiet it was. No cars, no sounds, just my footsteps echoing. About halfway down, I heard another set of footsteps. They were distant, but I knew they weren't mine. I brushed it off, thinking it could be someone else taking the shortcut, but I picked up my pace anyway. Then, the footsteps behind me sped up. I didn't dare look back, but every time I walked faster, so did the person behind me. My heart was pounding now, and I could barely think straight. I pulled my phone out to call someone, anyone, but just as I did, I heard a voice from behind. "Hey, where are you going in such a hurry?" I froze. I didn't want to engage, but something told me if I ignored him, he'd keep following. So I turned around, and there he was, a man in his late 30s, scruffy, with a chilling smile stretched across his face. I tried to play it off, said I was just heading home, but he kept walking toward me. "Do you live around here? It's not safe out this late." I told him I was fine and turned to leave, but he reached out and grabbed my arm. Not hard, but enough to let me know he was in control. He said, "You shouldn't walk alone. People do bad things out here." That's when I snapped. I yanked my arm free and bolted. I didn't look back. I just ran as fast as I could. When I finally reached a main road, I looked back, and he was just standing there at the alley's entrance, watching me with that same twisted smile. I never took that shortcut again, and to this day, I wonder what he would have done if I hadn't run. A few weeks ago, I decided to go for a walk at the local park after dinner. It was around 9 p.m., and the place was empty, except for a woman sitting on a bench near the entrance. She looked off. Her hair was tangled, her clothes wrinkled, but I figured she was probably just going through something tough, so I gave her a quick nod and kept walking. I took the trail that looped around the lake. It was peaceful at first, but as I made my way around the curve, I saw her again. She was just standing there in the middle of the trail, staring straight at me, smiling. but it wasn't a friendly smile. It felt sinister. I nodded again, just to be polite, and moved past her, picking up my pace. After a minute, I glanced back, and she was following me, her smile even wider now. I tried to ignore her, thinking maybe she was just being weird, but when I looked back again, she was closer. Then she spoke, almost in a whisper, but loud enough for me to hear. She said, "Why are you alone?" I felt a chill run down my spine. I didn't answer, just started walking faster, but her footsteps got louder, quickening behind me like she was jogging to keep up. When I turned around, she was practically right on top of me, her face twisted, her eyes wide, and that same disturbing smile. She muttered something under her breath, something I couldn't make out, but it sounded like, "Don't run." I broke into a sprint, desperate to get back to the main path. When I finally made it out of the park, I didn't look back, not even once. For days, I kept thinking I'd see her again, standing there with that haunting smile. I stopped going to the park after that,